And this is clearly a colonial project. Listen to how Harry Truman actually talks about it back in 1948.
We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased.
I mean, from the river to the sea, that's 6 million people. Harry Truman says, well, we're going to clear them out. Okay, they lived there for thousands of years. These are their ancestral homes. These are their lands. We're going to just kick them out and replace them with other people. And Truman says, well, it's not easy. You know, people are not going to be too happy about that. And then, I don't know if you picked up on this, VJ, but the map says Palestine. The map says Palestine there. That's the map that Harry Truman was using. So they knew exactly what they were doing. It's a cynical manipulation of the terrible trauma and Holocaust and genocide imposed on Jews in Europe by fascism, using it to basically carry out a fascist-like ethnic cleansing of the indigenous people in Palestine. And again, the U.S. was never motivated by altruistic reasons. I mean, most European Jews would undoubtedly have preferred to come to the United States if they were going to emigrate from Europe, not to a country in the third world. This was a funneling of people as part of a colonial project.
So, you know, it's very interesting. In 1948, when Truman is making those statements, around that time, the forcible expulsion of many, many of the Palestinians that lived in historic Palestine was taking place. And a Lebanese historian called that the Nakba. His name is Konstantin Zorayak. The Nakba means a catastrophe. For Palestinians, in fact, the Nakba isn't something that just happened in 1948. There's been a permanent Nakba, an everyday Nakba, a Nakba that keeps happening day in and day out. Something quite fascinating. In 1977, when the Likud party won the elections for the first time, Ariel Sharon, the big general of the Israeli Defense Force, takes the agriculture ministry. Now, it's interesting. Why would a general take the agriculture ministry? It's not that Ariel Sharon, was interested in beetroots and potatoes and so on. No, it's through the agriculture ministry in 1977 that they begin to put in place the settlement project, that they're going to go into what they call Judea and Samaria and start to remove Palestinian villages from there and build settlements. This is long before the Oslo Accords of 1994, which effectively put in place Sharon's plan. You see, this everyday Nakba is something that has been going on for a long time. You have villages removed. You have the situation for Palestinians made so bad that it's impossible for them to remain where they are, and live a sane life. The conditions of life are made more and more difficult. Well, in 1994, when the Oslo Accords were signed, this idea appeared that there will be two states. It was known as the two-state solution, that West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza would be the Palestinian state, and then Israel would have the rest. Already, of course, this is a much diminished part of Palestine. Well, one of the parts of the Oslo Accord was safe passage between Gaza, East Jerusalem, and West Bank. That means Palestinians could move freely between these three parts of the occupied Palestinian territory. Also on the table was no settlements, because this is to be the Palestinian state. The very next day after the Oslo Accords were signed, free passage was basically invalidated. The apartheid wall begins to be built around East Jerusalem, around the West Bank. East Jerusalem increasingly was encroached. Safe passage between these three parts of the occupied Palestinian territory not really permitted, and so on. So the two-state solution from the very get-go in 1994 became illusionary. Now it is almost entirely an illusion. If you go to the West Bank in particular, you'll see that it's impossible to imagine this being a contiguous Palestinian state with the number of settlements there are. Well, the other option, of course, is the one state, and that's where from the river to the sea comes in. You see, the one state solution suggests that you build one state from the river to the sea that incorporates Israelis and Palestinians, but they are not going to live in an apartheid situation. That means full secular and democratic rights to everybody. But this approach is absolutely anathema to the right wing, and in fact, most of the ruling class in Israel, which is, wants to create an ethno-nationalist or a religious nationalist project, creating a Jewish state where people who are Palestinians will be permanent second-class citizens. Come back to the idea of the permanent Nakba. So the one-state solution is off the table, not because the Palestinians are not interested, but because effectively the Israeli ruling class is simply not going to permit it at this time. So what do we have? We have the Israeli ruling class for several decades committed to what I think of as the three-state solution. In other words, what's the three-state solution? If you go back to Harry Truman's map, you'll get it immediately. The three-state solution is Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. Push the Palestinians across the Jordan River into Jordan and let them then go to Lebanon if they'd like, and push the Palestinians of Gaza into the Sinai Desert in Egypt and take over the whole land. So, there are two competing visions of from the river to the sea. And I must say, this slogan is used a lot even in Israel. In fact, the basic law has enshrined the map of Greater Israel goes from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. So there are two visions of this slogan, from the river to the sea. One is the apartheid Israel slogan, creating Eretz Israel, Greater Israel, from the river to the sea, which is going to be a permanently apartheid condition for any of the Palestinians who don't go to the other three states and then further afield. And then there's the second slogan meaning from the river to the sea, which is to create a state which is not an apartheid state, but a secular and democratic state where justice is established for all. Now, this second use of the state is mischievously labeled by particularly the Western media, but also by politicians, as somehow meaning that the Palestinians want to bulldoze Israelis into the Mediterranean. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody is mentioning that. I was talking to some reporters about the march in Washington, D.C. They said, well, people were chanting the slogan, from the river to the sea. I said, well, I also chanted that slogan. And then they said, well, that means you want to, get rid of Israel. I said, no, I don't want to get rid of Israel. I don't think others want to get rid of Israel. What we want to do is to get rid of apartheid Israel. We want to overcome the apartheid conditions, build a secular democratic state. That seems to be the demand of a lot of people within Palestine. It's something that's on the agenda for people. We'll see if this is able to be established, but at least let people have a discussion and debate about it. Why can't there be a honest and decent debate about what could be a possible future? See, to keep talking about the two-state solution is to allow the permanent Nakba to continue, because this gives a kind of liberal cover to what's actually happening on the ground. There's a phrase that I've heard many times from Israeli high officials. They talk about changing the facts on the ground. If they change the facts on the ground, their negotiating position is much improved. In other words, if they build all the settlements, whether they're illegal or not is irrelevant, build the settlements fast. Those are the facts on the ground. After that, we can negotiate the situation. And I think that demonstrates that the two-state solution as an actual political project doesn't have any relevance at this particular time. And so from the river to the sea doesn't mean get rid of people from Israel and so on. I think that is not something that anybody is calling for, but to establish justice in that region, justice that is beyond apartheid. I think it's really very unfortunate and malicious for people not to want to have a discussion about this, but to make assumptions of what other people think when they use statements like that.